Finally, you guys understand. Guys, there are 8 billion people in the world today. And the problem is, only a minority think. Welcome back to The Mind of a Minority. My name's Charles. Thank you for joining me. Today I want to talk about something very briefly that I covered 2-3 months ago. And that is the whole count of fatalities for COVID-19. I've got a lot of folks who are coming to me now saying, after all of these protests and gatherings, doesn't seem like everybody's getting sick. So what's going on? Charles, if you're right, how would they have done this? How would they have perpetrated it? And the answer is really quite simple. My story has not changed one iota. What we have to do in order to really understand what's going on, because the media is notorious for this, they'll give you a problem, right? And they'll focus on that problem. And a lot of times they'll use emotionally charged language to make you feel a certain way about that problem. But what they never do is show you that problem and then give you the scope of the problem, meaning that they don't give you the problem out of the whole picture. They just focus on that problem. And so you don't really understand, 120,000 lives, gee, that's a lot of people who are dying. But you don't really get to drill down into those numbers and then compare them to, normal numbers, right? That's pre-COVID numbers. The media would never put that on the air. You know why? Because then nobody would believe in it. Let me tell you exactly how they're perpetrating this. First of all, it's important to know how they're counting the COVID-19 fatalities. So this is the Virginia Statistics Reporting Guidance, or the Vital Statistics Reporting Guidance. And it basically explains to all of the healthcare facilities how to count a COVID-19 death. I've highlighted some sections. You can pause it and read it if you want to, but basically what it says is that you want to test as many people as you can. And even if you can't test them, you can reasonably presume that they had COVID if they experienced or exhibit any sort of flu-like symptoms. So they also are testing people who are dying from COVID-19. And if they had pre-existing conditions, they list that as the underlying cause of death, and they list COVID-19 as the actual cause of death, right? So that's even people who have like cancer. I would say that cancer is what actually killed them, because if they didn't have the cancer, they would have been able to beat COVID, right? So it seems disingenuous to list the numbers the way that they are, but let's actually talk about the numbers themselves. Do you know how many people die every year from respiratory issues in the United States? Well, what about these four? Asthma, emphysema, bronchitis, and COPD. 160,000 a year. What about lung cancer? Do you know how many people die from lung cancer every year? 142,000 people. What about pneumonia and influenza? 55,500 people every year. This is just what happens. But the way that the media is presenting it, you would think that these people are dying on top of the COVID-19 numbers. And I believe we're somewhere around 120,000 today as of June 16th. Now, if they're testing everybody who's dying and they happen to have this highly communicable disease, then of course everybody who's dying is going to have it. Who dies primarily from respiratory illness? Older people, which explains exactly why. If you take the number of people over the age of 45, you're going to end up with your fatalities being 97.5%. So 97.5% of the people who are dying are over the age of 45. Less than 2,500 people under that age have died from COVID-19. So what does that tell you? It tells you that a moderately healthy individual has nothing to fear. But they are really, really pushing this narrative. And one thing that's distracting from it are, all of the protests that are going on right now. I even saw where, I believe it was the CDC or World Health Organization, said that it was okay for people to protest in those particular instances, but it wasn't okay for people to protest coming out of the lockdown. Why is there such a concerted effort to make this disease seem really, really scary, this COVID-19 seem really, really scary, when if you're under the age of 45, you're almost guaranteed to not die from this thing? Well, it seems really disingenuous to me. And I hope that you were able to gain something from this. And for all of the people who reached out to me and said, hey, you know what? I'm checking my ego. I want to be objective here. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I need to know what's right. I salute you. Because it is far easier to fool someone than it is to convince them that they've been fooled. I even fell for it. But I continue to be objective, to look at the data, see what really makes sense, and figure it out for myself. Because you can't rely, as I've stated before, on the media to give you perspective. Now it's crazy. I see people walking around in stores with rags, scarves, t-shirts, pantyhose wrapped around their face. Like it's gonna help them survive this pandemic. But they have no idea that all of the people who are dying are people who were going to or were likely to have died anyways. There may be some exceptions. But with a number like 120,000 and less than 2,500 of them being under the age of 45, there's not going to be very many exceptions, right? There are always exceptions to the rule. But by and large, these people who are dying, or their elder age, they're dying because they were most likely going to die anyways. And I mean, we're even seeing instances where people who are dying from totally unrelated issues that had no symptoms, falling off of a ladder and hitting their head, blood clot, stroke, all of that. And COVID-19 is going on the death certificate. We've got to do a better job at making sure we do our own due diligence in reviewing these stories. I was beginning to lose faith in humanity. And a lot of the folks who have reached out to me and said, hey, I realized something is not right. You were right before when you said that, there was no reason for us to be afraid. Tell me, if this is not really as bad as they say it is, how did they get those numbers up so high? Why are there so many people dying from it? And how severe is it? Okay, so I'm going to leave you with this. Always remember, stay objective. Whenever you get information even from me or another news source, ask yourself, what bias is here? Not only what information are they providing to me, but what are they trying to get me to believe about that information? Also, always try to have an educated understanding of the scope of the problem. Perspective is what I refer to it as. How serious is this problem compared to other problems? How serious is this problem in the grand scheme of things, not in the micro, because every life is important. But we can't sacrifice everything else in order to focus on one isolated incident. So we have to have perspective and tackle things that are most important in a certain order. Draw your own conclusions from the data. And last but certainly not least, never, ever trust a corporate mouthpiece. Thank you so much for joining me. If this video has helped you to see things in a new light or a new way, please like it, comment down below, share this video, click the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so that you get notified for any future videos that I released. And hey, stay objective, pay attention. Things are not as they seem. Wish you all the very best. Love you guys, and I'll see you soon.